Welcome back to The Deep Dive, where we take the world's most effective strategies for living, working, and thinking and distill them into knowledge tailored just for you. Today, we are tackling really the biggest, most personal question we get asked all the time. How do I actually become my best self?
Yeah, it's the ultimate question, isn't it? And I think for a lot of people, just the sheer scale of that ambition, becoming the best version, it's frankly overwhelming. We tend to think, okay, profound change must need profound effort.
Right, like some massive, maybe even painful overhaul. Huge goals, crazy willpower, total revolution.
Exactly. But the sources we've dug into for this dive, they point somewhere completely different. They argue that real transformative change doesn't come from these giant leaps. It comes from something, well, much smaller, almost mundane.
And that's where this idea of atomic habits comes in.
Precisely. Think about an atom, right? It's the smallest fundamental unit you can get within a larger system. So our mission today is really to unpack this practical framework. It shows how tiny, almost negligible 1% improvements, these atomic units, how they build up. And when they compound over time, they deliver results that just blow those big, scary goals out of the water. This really is a kind of shortcut to mastering the science of self-improvement, focused squarely on that best self question.
Okay, let's really get into this 1% thing, because honestly, on the surface, 1% sounds, well, trivial, almost insultingly small. How can something so tiny possibly lead to real transformation? We probably need a concrete example.
Yeah, and the sources give us a perfect one, the story of British cycling. This requires understanding a philosophy the sources call the aggregation of marginal gains.
Okay.
Before 2003, British cycling was, well, let's just say they weren't setting the world on fire. They were basically the definition of mediocrity in their sport.
That's putting it mildly, wasn't it? Since 1908, nearly 100 years, they'd won exactly one Olympic gold medal.
One. And absolutely no British winner of the Tour de France in its entire 110-year history at that point.
Yeah.
It was so bad, major bike manufacturers actually refused to sell them bikes.
Seriously?
Refused. Yep. They were afraid that having British cyclists use their gear would actually damage their brand. Because everyone just associated them with, well, losing consistently.
Wow. Okay, so that's rock bottom. Then what happened in 2003?
They hired Dave Brailsford as their new performance director. And Brailsford came in with this very distinct philosophy, the aggregation of marginal gains. His commitment was simple, but totally relentless. Find a tiny 1% improvement in absolutely everything the team did. Everything.
Okay, so not just one big change, but looking everywhere for small edges.
Exactly. Brailsford understood that huge performance jumps weren't hidden behind some single secret weapon. It was about the cumulative power of hundreds of tiny, separate improvements. They started with the obvious stuff, naturally.
Like the bikes themselves.
Right. Redesigning the bike seats for better ergonomics for each rider. Rubbing alcohol on the tires just a tiny bit for fractionally better grip. Basic mechanical tweaks.
But the really interesting part, the part that feels atomic, is when they started applying that 1% rule to things that seemingly had nothing to do with the actual bike race.
That's where it gets really powerful. Because they realized performance isn't just about your legs pumping or the bike's aerodynamics. It's the whole system around the athlete. So they dove into these overlooked areas.
Like?
Okay, so they had riders wear electrically heated overshorts. Why? To keep their muscle temperature absolutely ideal between events or warm-ups. Tiny edge. They tested tons of different fabrics in a wind tunnel.
For outdoor racing.
Yeah, and they found that indoor racing suits, which were lighter and more aerodynamic, actually performed better outdoors than the standard outdoor gear. Again, a small gain nobody else was chasing.
This sounds almost obsessive, but how do we know this wasn't just, finally getting good coaches or finding better athletes? Was it really the 1% stuff?
That's always the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
But the pattern strongly suggests it was the system. This 1% focus drove them to optimize things nobody else was even measuring. Get this. They hired a surgeon.
A surgeon for what?
To teach every single rider the absolute optimal way to wash their hands. Not just to be clean, but specifically to minimize catching colds or flu.
So fewer lost training days. That makes sense.
Exactly. Fewer sick days means more consistent training. Marginal gain. They analyze sleep patterns, finding the best pillow and mattress combo for each individual rider to maximize recovery.
And the famous story, they even painted the inside of the team truck white.
Yes. That's like the perfect symbol of marginal gains, isn't it? They painted it white so they could instantly spot tiny bits of dust. Dust that could potentially get into the bike mechanics and degrade performance just a tiny bit during transport or maintenance.
It's relentless attention to micro details that nobody else thought mattered.
That's the core of it. targeting inputs that weren't even considered part of the performance system before.
And the results were just undeniable within 5 years, right? The 2008 Beijing Olympics.
Domination, absolute domination. They won an incredible 60% of the available gold medals in cycling, and that wasn't a fluke. They kept it up for a decade. We're talking 178 world championships, multiple Tour de France victories, 5 wins in 6 years after over a century of nothing.
It really proves the underlying math, doesn't it? This compounding effect.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We really need to grasp this power of compounding. If you genuinely commit to getting just 1% better, just one tiny percent every single day for a year, you don't end up 3.65 times better.
No, it's way more. It's exponential.
You end up 37 times better than where you started. That curve shoots upward. Time becomes your greatest ally when you have good habits working for you.
But that same compounding power works in reverse too, right? It's a double-edged sword. Bad habits compound just as powerfully.
Oh, absolutely. It cuts both ways. Think about productivity. Positively, when you master a small skill, maybe automate a repetitive task you do every day, that habit frees up mental energy. Your brain can now tackle the next, slightly harder problem. That's positive compounding.
Like learning keyboard shortcuts, maybe? Saves seconds each time, adds up to hours.
Perfect example. Or knowledge. It compounds like interest.
Yeah.
Every book you read doesn't just add facts. It potentially gives you new mental models, new ways to connect ideas. Your capacity for complex thought grows exponentially. Even relationships.
Oh.
Just being a little bit kinder, a little more thoughtful in each interaction. It seems small day to day, but over years, it builds this incredibly strong, resilient network of trust and goodwill. That's positive compounding.
Okay, and the dark side, negative compounding.
Stress is a big one. Think about chronic low-level stress. That daily traffic jam that raises your blood pressure just a bit, worrying about a small debt. Individually, they seem manageable. Annoying, but manageable.
But day after day, year after year.
They compound.
Yeah.
Physiologically, mentally. They contribute to serious health issues down the line. It's the slow accumulation. Same with negative thoughts. If you keep telling yourself you're not good enough or interpreting events negatively,
You get stuck in a loop. You start filtering everything through that negative lens.
exactly. You reinforce that negative identity, making it harder and harder to break free. It compounds downward.
So, okay, if everyone wants to be their best self, and we know these small 1% improvements are the engine, why do so few people actually achieve that kind of transformation? This brings us to that next really critical idea from the sources. Shifting focus from goals to systems.
Yes, this is probably the most crucial distinction. Think about it. Successful people and unsuccessful people often share the exact same goals. In the Tour de France, every team wants to win. That's the goal.
But only one team wins.
Right. So the goal itself clearly isn't the differentiator. If everyone has the same finish line in mind, what separates the winners? It's not the outcome they desire, it's the process they follow. It's the system.
The system being the collection of daily habits and routines.
Precisely. The British cycling team always wanted to win medals. They had the goal for decades. But they only started achieving it when they implemented Brailsford's system of continuous marginal improvement. The system delivered the goal.
So the advice is to fall in love with the process, this system, not just dream about the outcome. But how do you make that system stick? How do you stop it feeling like just another chore you have to manage day in, day out?
That's where the deepest level of change comes in. The ultimate form of motivation, the sources argue, isn't external rewards or even the goal itself. It's when the habit, the system, stops being something you do and becomes part of who you are.
The identity shift.
Exactly. This is the most powerful driver. The ultimate focus shouldn't just be on what you want to achieve, lose weight, write a book, but on who you want to become. A healthy person, a writer.
And this is where that idea of casting votes comes in. Every action is a vote.
Yes. It reframes everything. Every single action you take is essentially a vote for the type of person you wish to become. It sounds small, but think about it. When you manage to write just one page, you're casting a vote for being a writer.
Even if it's a terrible page.
Even if it's a terrible page, the act itself is the vote. When you choose to start a workout, even if it's just for 10 minutes, you're casting a vote for being an athlete, or at least someone who prioritizes movement.
Okay, I can see how that reframes failure too.
Yeah.
If you miss a day, you didn't fail at being a writer, you just missed a vote or cast a vote for your old identity.
Precisely. It lowers the stakes of any single instance. It's not about perfection. It's about the balance of evidence over time. Yeah. And crucially, these small wins, these successful votes, they build self-trust. They're like collecting data points.
Data points that prove to yourself you actually can be this new person.
Exactly. You're gathering evidence that you are capable of being disciplined or healthy
Yeah.
or creative, and that evidence reinforces the new self-image, making it easier to cast the next vote.
There's a great little anecdote in the sources about this, isn't there? The guy who couldn't stop biting his nails.
Yes, it illustrates this perfectly. He'd tried for years using sheer willpower, just grit his teeth and stop,
Uh-huh.
and it never worked. Why? Because his identity was a nail biter. That's who he was.
So what changed?
He tried something identity-focused. He asked his wife to schedule his first ever professional manicure, not as a punishment or because the cost would deter him.
But because of how it made him feel.
Exactly. He saw his nails looking genuinely nice, properly cared for the first time. The manicurist even complimented them. And suddenly, he felt a sense of pride in having neat, healthy hands.
Ah, so the desired identity shifted. It wasn't just stop biting. It became be someone who takes pride in their hands.
Correct. And once that identity shifted, the habit of biting became fundamentally unattractive. It clashed directly with this newfound pride. The identity change drove the behavior change, not the other way around.
Okay, so if we want to start casting votes for a new identity, we first need to understand our current voting patterns, right? See where our votes are going now. How do we observe our current system?
The absolute first step, and maybe the most eye-opening, is observation, making the unconscious conscious. The sources call this creating a habit scorecard. Most of us are just on autopilot for what, 90% of the day?
Easily.
So you need to become aware. You literally start by listing out every single tiny thing you do on a typical day. Wake up, turn off alarm, check phone.
Oh, God, the phone check. Okay. Go to the bathroom, brush teeth, make coffee. List it all out.
Everything you can think of. Then you go back through that list and score each habit. Plus sign, plus for a good habit, minus sign for a bad one, equal sign for neutral.
But good and bad can be tricky. As you said, smoking might feel good in the moment because it relieves stress, even if it's bad long term.
Exactly right. So the key isn't some strict moral judgment. Habits are just tools, effective or ineffective solutions to recurring problems in your environment. The real question to ask when scoring is the crucial one. Does this behavior help me become the type of person I wish to be?
Ah, connected back to that desired identity.
Does this habit cast a vote for or against my desired identity? That's the filter. That gives you the baseline. Once you have that awareness of your current cues and habits, then you can start applying the 4 laws of behavior change to redesign your system, starting with Law 1, make it obvious.
Make the cues for your good habits obvious. Because our brains are trying to automate everything to save energy, right? We run on these environmental cues, triggering routines without us even thinking.
And that reliance on cues can be incredibly powerful, sometimes life-saving. There's an amazing anecdote about a paramedic.
No, yeah, the one at the family gathering.
That's the one. She's there, her father-in-law seems totally fine, chatting away, but she takes one look at his face and just knows something is wrong. She insists he goes to the hospital.
Yeah.
Immediately.
And she was right, wasn't she? He had a major blockage.
Hours later, he was in emergency surgery for a critical arterial blockage that could have killed him. What did she see? She couldn't even articulate it consciously, but years of seeing patients, thousands of faces, had trained her brain to recognize a very subtle pattern, maybe a slight change in skin coloration, blood flow that signaled danger.
Her unconscious pattern recognition, built through repetition, picked up the cue.
Exactly. Her system fired off an alert based on a deeply ingrained pattern. Powerful stuff.
But that autopilot, that blind pattern following, can also be dangerous. You mentioned that almost funny story about the retail clerk.
Cutting up the customer's credit card. Yes, it's extreme, but it shows the downside perfectly. The clerk was so used to a specific routine, process a gift card, then immediately cut up the used gift card. It was automatic.
So when the next customer paid with a real credit card?
The established pattern took over. The cue, transaction finished, triggered the ingrained habit, destroy card. Logic went out the window because the autopilot was just following the track it always followed.
Okay, so if autopilot is so powerful, both for good and bad, how do we make sure we're consciously engaging when we need to? How do we make important actions obvious?
Well, we can borrow techniques from places where mistakes are high stakes, like industrial safety. Think about the Japanese railway system and their technique called pointing and calling.
Right, where they physically point at things and say them out loud.
Exactly. The train operator doesn't just glance at a signal. They point directly at it and verbally announce, "Signal is green." They point at the speedometer, call out the speed. They point at the schedule, call out the time.
It seems redundant, but it forces conscious attention.
It engages multiple senses, sight, action, speech, pulling the behavior out of the non-conscious autopilot and into conscious awareness. It drastically reduces errors by up to 85% in some studies. It makes the critical cues impossible to ignore.
And for our own habits, we can achieve a similar effect by designing our environment, right? Making the cues for good habits unavoidable. This is that choice architecture idea.
That's the practical application.
Yeah.
You're essentially designing the space around you, so the easiest, most visible option is the one you want to encourage. The Massachusetts General Hospital cafeteria is a classic example.
Yeah, the doctor who wanted staff to eat healthier without nagging them.
Exactly. They didn't put up posters or give lectures, they just changed the environment. The fridges right by the cash registers used to be filled only with soda, so they simply added bottled water to those same prominent fridges.
And put water elsewhere, too.
Yep, added baskets of bottled water next to food stations all around the room, made water the most obvious, easily reachable choice.
And the result, without saying a single word to anyone.
Sales of bottled water shot up by nearly 26%. Soda sales dropped over 11%, just by changing the placement. People often choose things not based on what they want, but based on what's there.
So if you want to work out, leave your gym clothes right by your bed. Don't hide them in a drawer.
Exactly. Make the cue impossible to miss. Environment is like this invisible hand, constantly shaping your behavior, whether you realize it or not.
Okay, so we've made the cue obvious. But sometimes, even if we see the cue, we just don't feel like doing the thing. It's not appealing enough. That brings us neatly to law 2, make it attractive. And this gets into the brain chemistry, right? Dopamine.
Dopamine is absolutely central to this. For a long time, scientists thought dopamine was the pleasure chemical. You do something good, you get a dopamine hit, you feel pleasure. Simple.
But it's more about anticipation.
Much more. We now understand dopamine is released primarily when we anticipate a reward. It's the chemical of desire, of craving. It's what motivates you to act in the first place. Your brain actually devotes far more resources to wanting rewards than it does to liking them once you get them.
That famous rat study really highlights this difference between wanting and liking, doesn't it?
It does. Researchers blocked dopamine production in rats. What happened? The rats completely lost the desire to go get sugar water. They just sat there, no motivation to seek it out.
But they still enjoyed it if it was given to them.
Crucially, yes. If the researchers put the sugar water directly in their mouths, the rats showed all the facial expressions of pleasure. They still liked it just as much. But without dopamine, the wanting, the drive to take action was gone. Desire dies, action stops.
And what's really fascinating, maybe a bit scary, is how modern life has kind of hijacked this dopamine system with what the sources call supernormal stimuli.
Right. This is taking a natural reward, something our ancestors evolved to seek out, like sugar, salt, fat, social connection, and creating an exaggerated, hyper-concentrated version.
Like junk food versus finding some berries.
Exactly. Junk food packs way more calories, salt, sugar, and fat than anything found naturally. Social media gives you instant, overwhelming social validation clicks that tribal life never could. Video games offer constant novelty and achievement far beyond everyday tasks.
So these modern temptations are almost irresistible because they trigger a much stronger dopamine response, a much stronger craving than the natural rewards our brains were designed for.
Precisely. The system is basically rigged against our ancient wiring. These supernormal stimuli push our evolutionary buttons way harder. But we can actually use this science to our advantage with a strategy called temptation bundling.
Which is basically linking something you want to do with something you need to do.
You got it. You pair an action that gives you that dopamine hit, the want, with an action that you know is good for you, but maybe isn't inherently exciting, the need.
Can you give an example beyond just, say, only watching Netflix while on the treadmill?
Think bigger scale.
Yeah.
Look at ABC's TGIT. Thank God. Its Thursday marketing campaign a few years back. They needed viewers to commit to watching a specific block of 3 Shonda Rhimes shows every Thursday night. That was the need from the network's perspective.
Okay.
So how did they make it attractive? They bundled it. They relentlessly associated watching those shows, the need, with the things people wanted to do on a Thursday night. Relax, unwind, maybe pour a glass of red wine, get some popcorn. Indulgence.
So they linked the required action watching with the anticipation of pleasure? Wine, popcorn, relaxation?
Exactly. They made the habit of watching their shows far more attractive because the craving for the indulgence got tied directly to the act of tuning in.
Social influence is another huge factor in attractiveness, isn't it? We tend to imitate certain groups of people.
Hugely important. Habits become attractive when they align with the norms of the groups we belong to, or want to belong to. The sources say we primarily imitate three groups: the close, family and friends; the many, the tribe or majority; and the powerful, those with status. Let's look at the first two.
Close our immediate circle.
We are incredibly influenced by the people we spend the most time with. Their habits rub off on us, often unconsciously. There's data showing that if one person in a romantic relationship loses a significant amount of weight, their partner is likely to slim down too, about a third of the time.
Like invisible peer pressure.
Absolutely. Which means one of the most effective things you can do is join a culture where your desired behavior is already the normal behavior.
So if you want to exercise more, hang out with people who already exercise regularly. It just becomes normal.
Exactly. It stops feeling like some heroic effort and just becomes what people in your circle do. Want to read more? Join a book club. Want to get fit but feel intimidated? Join a community like Nerd Fitness, where fitness is normalized within a culture you might already identify with. The tribe makes it attractive.
And then there's the pull of the many conforming to the crowd. The Solomon Asch experiments from the 50s are kind of the classic demonstration here, right?
Chillingly effective demonstration. Ash showed people two cards. One had a single line. The second had three lines of different lengths. He asked, which line on the second card matches the line on the first? The answer was always blindingly obvious.
But he put participants in a room with actors.
Actors who were all instructed to deliberately choose the wrong line. And what happened? Faced with a unanimous but clearly incorrect group consensus, nearly 75% of the real participants went along with the wrong answer at least once.
They literally doubted their own eyes to avoid standing out from the group.
It shows the incredible power of conformity. When we're unsure, or even when we are sure but feel social pressure, we look to the majority to guide our behavior. We want to fit in. That makes conforming habits very attractive.
Okay, so we've made it obvious, we've made it attractive. But even then, sometimes things just feel like too much work, which leads us straight into Law 3. Make it easy. Convenience rules.
It really does. Our brains are fundamentally wired to conserve energy. It's called the law of least effort. Given two similar options, we will naturally gravitate towards the one that requires less work.
It sounds a bit lazy, but you're saying it's actually an ancient survival mechanism.
Totally. For our ancestors roaming the savannah, conserving energy wasn't laziness, it was critical. You didn't know where your next meal was coming from or when you might need a burst of energy to escape a predator. So the brain evolved to default to the easiest path whenever possible, to keep energy in reserve. That wiring is still there.
So forget pumping up motivation all the time. Focus on making the desired action easier, like removing the kink in a garden hose instead of it just turning the tap on harder.
That's the perfect analogy. Trying to rely on motivation for a difficult habit is like forcing water through that bent hose. Making the habit easy is like removing the bend. Suddenly, the water flows freely. The goal isn't to only do easy things, but to reduce the friction for the good habits that pay off long term.
And reducing friction, this idea of addition by subtraction, we see it in industry too. You mentioned Japanese lean manufacturing earlier.
A prime example. Starting decades ago, Japanese companies became obsessed with removing wasted time, wasted motion, wasted effort from their production lines. They redesigned workspaces so tools were right there within easy reach, minimized steps, eliminated unnecessary tasks.
And subtracting that effort added huge value.
Massive value. Their products became incredibly reliable and efficient. Remember the comparison. In 1974, American-made TVs needed 5 times more service calls than Japanese ones. They dominated markets simply by making quality easier to achieve through relentless friction reduction.
And that applies on a personal level, and even in government policy. That example of the British government getting more people to pay taxes on time.
Right. They realized every single step someone had to take was a point of friction where they might drop off.
Yeah.
Their simple change. Instead of sending people to a website where they then had to find and download the tax form.
They just linked directly to the form itself.
One less click. One tiny reduction in friction. And the response rate jumped from 19.2% to 23.4%. Millions in extra revenue collected faster just by making it marginally easier.
Another powerful technique here is priming the environment, making the next action easier ahead of time.
Yeah, the sources call this being proactively lazy. Like that IT developer, Oswald Knuckles, his strategy: reset the room after each activity. Finishes watching TV, remote goes back, blanket gets folded. ready for the next use.
Wipes the toilet while the shower warms up.
Little things that prepare the environment for the next necessary action, making it almost frictionless when the time comes.
Mhm.
It removes future decision fatigue and effort.
And this make it easy principle isn't just about physical tasks, it applies to learning and practice too. The importance of repetition over trying to be perfect from the start.
Oh, this is huge. People get so bogged down trying to figure out the absolute perfect plan before they start. They want the masterpiece on the first try. The photography class experiment is the classic illustration.
Remind us how that worked. Two groups.
Right. One group, the quality group, was told they'd be graded solely on the excellence of a single photo submitted at the end of the semester. One perfect shot. The other group, the quantity group, was told their grade depended purely on the number of photos they submitted. 100 photos got an A, 90 a B, and so on. Quality didn't matter for their grade, only volume,
And counterintuitively, the quantity group took the best pictures.
by far. Why? Because while the quality group sat around theorizing about perfection, getting paralyzed by analysis, the quantity group was out there constantly shooting, making mistakes, trying different things, learning by doing, getting feedback from each shot. They were building the skill through sheer repetition.
Action beats optimization, especially early on. Repetition carves the neural pathways.
It makes the action automatic, like learning scales on a piano or vocabulary in a new language. Volume first, then refine.
So if law 3 is make it easy for good habits, the inversion must be make it difficult for bad habits. Increase the friction.
Exactly. And often the best way to do that is using a commitment device. This is a choice you make now that locks you into better behavior later, or makes bad behavior much harder.
Like the ultimate example, Victor Hugo writing The Hunchback of Notre Dame.
Facing a crushing deadline, what did he do? He had his assistant lock away all his clothes, except for a big, shapeless shawl. He literally couldn't go outside without looking ridiculous.
He made procrastination physically difficult, almost impossible.
He dramatically increased the friction for the bad habit, leaving his studies, socializing, and was forced to just sit there and write. Finish the book weeks early. It's an extreme measure, but it illustrates the principle.
Okay, we've hit obvious, attractive, easy. Now we get to the final law, the one that really determines if a habit sticks long term. Law 4, make it satisfying.
This is absolutely critical. It's the cardinal rule of behavior change, according to the sources. What is immediately rewarded gets repeated. What is immediately punished gets avoided. Simple as that.
But that clashes with modern life, right? Most of our important goals have delayed rewards.
Exactly. We live in what's called a delayed return environment. You work out today for health benefits, months or years down the line. You save money now for retirement, decades away. You study now for a degree later.
But our brains didn't evolve for that.
Our brains evolved in an immediate return environment. For thousands of generations, the focus was, where's the next meal? Is there immediate danger? Find shelter now. Actions had immediate consequences, immediate feedback. Our brains are still wired for that instant gratification.
So we have this fundamental mismatch. How do we bridge that gap? How do we make long-term behaviors satisfying now?
We need to find ways to inject immediate rewards into habits that have delayed benefits. The public health work in Karachi, Pakistan is a fantastic example.
The hand-washing project, right. People knew they should wash their hands.
They knew it was important for preventing disease, but the habit just wasn't sticking consistently. Why? Because washing hands with basic, unscented soap isn't particularly satisfying. There's no immediate payoff.
So what was the solution?
The breakthrough came when researcher Stephen Luby and his team introduced a better soap, a soap that lathered up really nicely, felt good, and smelled great. Suddenly, the act of washing hands provided immediate sensory pleasure.
Like the minty tingle in toothpaste that makes brushing feel effective right away.
Exactly like that. That immediate satisfaction reinforced the behavior. They turned a rational health chore into a mildly pleasurable experience. And the results? Diarrhea rates dropped by 52%. Respiratory infections fell significantly. Making it satisfying worked.
Okay, that makes sense for doing good habits. But what about avoiding bad habits? Like, say, deciding not to buy that impulse purchase. There's no action, so there's no immediate reward for doing nothing.
That's the inherent challenge with avoidance goals. You don't get a little dopamine hit for not eating the cookie or not making the frivolous purchase. The solution: make the avoidance visible and rewarding in a different way.
How do you make not doing something visible?
You create a visual representation of the reward you're gaining by abstaining. For example, set up a separate savings account and label it with something you really want, new leather jacket or trip to Italy.
Yeah.
Then, every time you successfully resist that impulse by, say you skip the $5 fancy coffee, You immediately transfer that exact amount into your leather jacket account.
Ah, so you get an immediate visible hit of satisfaction seeing that account balance go up. You're rewarding the non-action.
Precisely. You're making the benefit of avoidance tangible and immediate, linking it directly to a desired future reward.
And visual measurement in general seems incredibly powerful for satisfaction.
Habit tracking is one of the most effective tools because it leverages multiple laws at once. It makes the habit obvious. You have to physically record it. It makes it attractive. Seeing a streak build up, you don't want to break the chain. And crucially, it makes it satisfying. Seeing the visual proof of progress feels good.
Like that stockbroker, Trent Deersmid, back in the 90s with the paper clips.
The perfect simple example. Started each day with 2 jars. One full of 120 paper clips, the other empty. For every single sales call he made, he moved 1 paper clip from the full jar to the empty jar.
So he had this constant visual measure of his effort right in front of him.
Immediately satisfying. He wasn't waiting for the commission check. He got a little win every time a clip moved. That visual feedback loop drove his performance through the roof. He massively increased his income in under 2 years, just from that simple tracking system.
But there's a dark side to measurement too, right? You can end up optimizing for the wrong thing.
Definitely. We have to be aware of Goodhart's law. It basically states, when a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure.
Meaning, if you focus solely on the number, you might sacrifice what actually matters.
Exactly. Imagine a restaurant manager who becomes obsessed only with hitting daily revenue targets. They might push servers to upsell aggressively, maybe cut corners on food quality to save costs, things that boost the daily number but damage customer satisfaction and long-term reputation. The metric became the goal, and the real goal, a thriving restaurant, suffered. Measurement is a guide, not the ultimate destination.
Okay, and for the flip side, making failure immediately punishing, we can use things like accountability contracts.
Yes, this inverts Law 4. It introduces immediate negative consequences for slipping up. The example of Brian Harris and his trainer is a good one. They literally signed a contract.
What were the terms?
He had to log his food intake every single day if he missed even one day. The immediate punishment was twofold. First, he had to dress up in business attire for work every day for the rest of that quarter, no more casual clothes. Second, he had to pay his trainer $200.
Ouch. That's immediate painful feedback.
You bet. It makes the cost of skipping the habit immediate and undesirable, rather than some vague future consequence like maybe getting weight back later.
All right, so we've got the 4 laws. Make it obvious, attractive, easy, and satisfying. That's the core system for building better habits. But if you're really aiming for your best self, the sources talk about some more advanced tactics too, like finding the right game to play in the first place and dealing with the inevitable boredom.
Yeah, these are crucial for long-term, high-level success. First, acknowledging the genes matter a lot. Success isn't just about hard work. It's often about finding the arena where your natural predispositions give you an advantage.
You can't just willpower your way through a bad fit.
Exactly. You're fighting an uphill battle if the game doesn't suit your innate talents. Think about the extreme physical differences between elite athletes in different sports.
Like Michael Phelps versus a top marathon runner?
Perfect comparison. Phelps. Tall, huge wingspan, massive torso, relatively short legs, built like a human boat, perfect for swimming. Then you look at Hicham El Guerrouj, the legendary Moroccan distance runner. Much shorter, incredibly light, long legs relative to his short torso, built for efficient running.
They both dominated their sports, but if they swapped...
Phelps trying to run marathons against El Guerrouj. El Guerrouj trying to swim the butterfly against Phelps that he crushed. Their genetics optimized them for entirely different physical challenges.
So genes don't determine your destiny, but they definitely influence the odds in different fields.
They predispose you. So a key part of becoming your best self is finding the environment, the pursuit, where your specific genetic hand, whether that's physical traits, personality factors like conscientiousness or risk tolerance, intellectual strengths, is actually an advantage. The challenge is figuring out what that is for you.
Which leads to this idea of the explore-exploit trade-off. How do you find your optimal niche?
It's a two-stage process. Early on in any new domain, career, hobby, relationships, you need a period of broad exploration. Try lots of different things. Sample widely. Except that you'll be inefficient initially. You're gathering data.
Like taking diverse classes in college before choosing a major.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Then, once you find something that clicks, something where you seem to get better returns for your effort than average, or something that just feels more natural, you shift gears into exploitation. That means doubling down, deepening your skills, focusing your energy on that promising path you discovered during exploration.
So how do you know during exploration if something is a good fit? What questions should you ask yourself?
The sources suggest a few key questions. First, what feels like fun to me, but looks like work to others? If a task drains others but energizes you, that's a huge clue. Second, where do I seem to get greater returns than the average person puts in? Are there areas where you pick things up faster or achieve better results with similar effort? Third, what comes naturally to me? Not necessarily what you're the absolute best at in the world, but what flows more easily for you personally.
Scott Adams, the creator of Dilbert, is used as a great example of finding a unique niche by combining skills, even if none were world-class individually.
Right. Adams himself says he's a pretty good artist, better than most, but not elite. He's funny, but not as funny as a top stand-up comedian. He has solid business knowledge from his corporate days. None of these skills alone are exceptional.
But the combination is rare.
Extremely rare. How many people can draw well, write jokes consistently, and have years of first-hand experience inside the absurdities of corporate bureaucracy? By combining those three pretty good skills, he created a unique niche where he had almost no competition. He didn't win by being the best artist or funniest writer. He won by being different.
Find your unique intersection of skills. Okay, so you find your game. You build your habits using the 4 laws. What's the final hurdle? The thing that derails even people with good systems.
Boredom.
Yeah.
Simple, grinding boredom. The initial excitement of any new habit inevitably fades. We thrive, motivation-wise, when we hit that Goldilocks zone, tasks that are challenging but achievable, right on the edge of our current abilities.
But as you master a habit, as it becomes routine,
It becomes less interesting, less challenging, more automatic, and therefore potentially boring. The sources argue that the real key to mastery, to reaching elite levels, isn't just pushing through difficulty, it's falling in love with the boredom of practice. It's showing up and doing the reps even when the novelty is long gone.
and that's what separates the professionals from the amateurs.
Absolutely. Anyone can put in the work when they feel motivated, inspired, excited. That's easy. The professional is the one who sticks to the schedule, regardless of mood. They show up when it's raining, when they're tired, when it feels tedious. The amateur lets life or their feelings get in the way. That relentless consistency, even through boredom, is what generates those compound returns over the long haul.
So if consistency is key but leads to boredom, how do top performers stay engaged and avoid just stagnating on autopilot?
They build in systems of reflection and review. They don't just do the reps blindly, they analyze them. Think of Eliud Kipchoge, arguably the greatest marathoner ever. He meticulously logs notes after every single training run, looking for tiny adjustments, things to improve.
For Chris Rock, testing jokes.
Exactly. He doesn't just write jokes and perform them. He tests hundreds of jokes in tiny clubs, notebook in hand, carefully tracking which lines land, which ones need tweaking, which ones get cut. It's constant refinement based on feedback.
So it's about stepping back periodically.
Yes. Having regular reviews, maybe weekly, monthly, and definitely an annual review where you look at the bigger picture. Are your habits still serving your identity? Are you working on the right things? Are there small tweaks needed? It prevents you from just mindlessly repeating outdated patterns. It keeps the system alive and optimized.
Wow. Okay, this has been an incredibly rich deep dive. We started with this huge question, how to become your best self, and found the answer isn't some single giant leap. It's about the accumulation of these tiny atomic habits, these 1% improvements that compound over time.
Yeah, and we saw that the system you build, the process is way more important than just having a big goal. And that the deepest change comes from shifting your identity, focusing on becoming the type of person who naturally does these things. Using those 4 laws make it obvious, attractive, easy, satisfying is the practical toolkit.
And then layering on finding the right game for your strengths, and crucially, developing the discipline to stick with it even when it gets boring.
It really reframes the whole pursuit. It's less about heroic effort and more about intelligent design and relentless consistency.
You mentioned the philosopher Seneca earlier, offering a really potent final thought on satisfaction that ties into this.
Yeah, Seneca had this line, "Being poor is not having too little, it is wanting more." It makes you think about satisfaction. Maybe satisfaction is really about the gap between what you like, what you have or achieve, and what you want, your desires, your next goal.
So if your wanting always outpaces your liking, you'll never feel satisfied no matter how much you achieve.
That seems to be the implication. True growth, maybe true satisfaction, involves managing that gap. recognizing that the initial thrill of achieving something fades. You might get those 37x results we talked about, but the day-to-day feeling might not be constant excitement. The results are real. The transformation is real, even if the dopamine rush normalizes. The reward becomes the transformation itself, not the fleeting feeling.
So, for everyone listening, especially the person who asked how to become their best self, the message seems to be, don't wait for some huge wave of motivation or a revolutionary plan.
Absolutely not. The sources point to a much simpler start. Right now, today. Look at your habit scorecard, or just think about your day. Pick one small habit that casts a vote for the person you want to become. Just one. And then do one tiny thing to prime your environment for it. Make that first small step easier.
Forget the 37 times better for now. Just focus on that 1% improvement today. Make the cue obvious, make it easy. Start there.
That's the atomic approach. Start small, be consistent, and let the compounding begin.